Welcome back to another episode of Know Your Legacy. I'm your host V, and today's guest is Jason Mayden. Put simply, Jason is a creative and visionary, a genius by all means, and the former design director at Nike for the brand Jordans. So all the design content and the creative content for Jordans was overseen personally by Jason, and now he's the founder of Superheroic, which is an organization that supports building stronger children by allowing them to play at their full capacity through their unique design of kids' footwear. So, Jason, it's a pleasure to have you on, man.
Thank you. One small correction. I'm far from a genius, man. I just work really, really hard, and I've been very fortunate. Very fortunate.
No, you've put your inner genius, inner legend, whatever you want to call it, to work, and it shows, because you've got the fruits of the labor, and you're inspiring people along the way to do the same and to pull out their inner genius or inner legend from them. So the first thing, actually, because we're still towards the beginning of the year, beginning half of 2019 anyway, what's your I wish I wonder for 2018?
So my I wish I wonder for 2018 is I like that I developed a different level of resilience, because I have physical resilience and I definitely have spiritual, but I think the intellectual resilience that I walked away from 2018 with is exceptional and kind of, I would say, humbling and grounding and exemplary for my children and what I want them to see. Because cognitive fatigue is a real thing. You can't have mental burnout. I always tell people in the athletic world, your mind quits before your body does. And so, being able to have that intellectual and mental resiliency be developed was excellent. I wish I would have spent more time being kind to myself. And I think about this, I've actually already addressed it. I've written or have wrote what I call a restoration creative direction plan for myself called Metamorphosis, where I've reprioritized how I view time away from Chronos time towards Kairos time. And I wonder if I would had maybe been more vocal about some of the areas where I struggled and allowed my inner circle in to support me, if I would have been able to maintain an even greater level of energy and an even greater level of self-awareness or self-kindness that was, missing in 2018.
That's some deep stuff. Like, that's not just one word answers. You're obviously taking time to sit and reflect and think about it. And I enjoy philosophy as well. It's one of the reasons I was drawn to want to reach out to you, is because you're someone who enjoys reading the works of Marcus Aurelius and many others. And one of the things, I think it's Seneca, who says, unexamined life is not worth living. And I found that to be true, because when you take the time to silently look back and review everything, whether it's the last 24 hours, 24 days, 24 months, you realize certain things, you see certain patterns and certain realizations, but in the silence. And so what does that process look like for you? Like, if you break it down for people, like, so let's say you're at the end of 2018, when does that happen? And, what's the thinking process like?
Yeah. So it's a great question. And you're right. That was Seneca who had that quote. He was a brilliant philosopher. My process is quite different because I'm always analyzing. I'm always thinking. I'm always extrapolating out 3 to 5 steps and visualizing what I want success to look like and working backwards from that point of success towards the present. So in 2018, in this instance, with those specific things I talked about working on, it came about from, some learning goals that I have for myself within the structure of a private kind of, I can't speak too much about it, but it's a private CEO kind of training program that I'm in through former colleagues at Stanford. And it's brilliant the way they look at building empathy and self-reflection and personal learning as a developmental right of CEOs, right? It's not like a milestone or check the box, but it is our right to put our personal development goals almost ahead of our business goals. And so for me, I was forced to have a self-reflective moment where I was addressing, okay, what did I want to learn coming into 18? Did I learn it? And then how do I get sharp going into 19? And so once I really had that critical analysis of myself and my energy, I realized, like, wait, I'm valuing my time wrong. I've gotten caught up in this performative mindset of I need to measure a checklist. I need to check the boxes, get this work done every day to feel complete in the field that I've actually accomplished something. And what I realized, it's not the amount of work that I did, it's the specific and qualified work that gave me the most value. So when I focused on the most important thing that day, I felt better. When I looked at my schedule and I looked at my meetings and saw who I met and which meetings allowed me to feel energized, and then I removed the ones that made me feel negative, I felt better. When I looked at how, the traffic patterns of driving my son to school in the morning and coming back to my office and realizing that gave me great amount of joy, I felt better. So it was just a matter of being able to say, what are the things that I'm doing daily that make me feel good? Can I measure those and can I repeat them in a scalable kind of almost unconscious way? So I've designed, what I like to call joy into my schedule, because we often design busyness and KPIs and outcomes, but how many of us design happiness and joy into our schedule? Intentional moments of disruption that remind us of why we're working in the first place. Because the reality is no one actually loves to work. That's a lie. No one's like, oh, I love work so much. No. You love what work produces. You love what work allows you to do. But the act of working, it's taxing on the body, it's taxing on the mind, but it's the outcome that we desire. So for me, I'm like, okay, do I love working long hours? Absolutely not. But do I love the look on my children's faces when we can take them places and educate them? Do I love how it feels to see my son build his own computer or my daughter teach herself piano? That's all the things that work allow me to enjoy. So that self-reflective moment towards the end of 2018 and really critical, I would say almost, apology back to myself of ignoring my basic carnal needs of sleep, love, and being present. Once I said, that's all I want my life to focus on going forward, things became so much simpler for me in 2019.
Yeah, I love that. And do you think it's a practice that everyone should do if they're not doing already?
Well, I try not to tell people what to do. But what I can suggest is that if you haven't taken the time to really understand your own needs, then you can't fulfill nor address the needs of others. It's basic survival. And we don't take inventory of our needs, right? We talk a lot about our wants because we're very privileged. We live in a Western world and we have the ability to say, I want this, I want that. And we've reframed wants as needs, right? I want more sleep. I want more this. It's like, well, that's actually a need. You need to sleep. When people say, oh, I wish I had more, it's like, that's a need, bro. Like you have to sleep to live. But we turn our basic necessities into almost like luxury privileges because we for some reason believe the more we work, the more we talk about how tired we are, the more we talk about our struggles, somehow that's a signifier of success. So when you look at countries that are quote unquote impoverished, people don't have a lot of money, so therefore they don't have a lot of things to distract them. So what they value is their time. They value their family. They value the quality of a meal. They value interaction a lot more. So it's getting back to the simplicity of life and realizing that, if I was to give anyone some insight from my life, when you're dead and gone, your eulogy should not be your resume. If that's your eulogy, that's a waste of a life. That's a waste of a life. It's a byproduct of your life, but it should not be the sum total of it. So I want what people say to me is like, Jason made me feel that I was cared for. I was seen. He understood me. He loved me. He motivated me. That's what I want my life to stand for. Not Jason sold this many shoes. Jason made this much money. That doesn't help anybody. And I can't take that with me. So you have to design, if I was to give a bit of advice, design the history you want to leave behind while you're still alive. Like, what do you want people to say about you when you're no longer here? Live your life that way.
Yeah, I love that, man, so much, because that's the whole message behind the whole name of this podcast, Know Your Legacy. And it's getting people to think about, how do you want to be remembered? And not this whole concept of let's wait till we're retired or 60 or 70 and then think about what do we want to leave behind. Because how do you know, first of all, you're going to live that long? And second of all, that, you're going to have the physical means to create whatever you're wanting to create at that age. So, and that's the common thread I see between people like yourself and others of that stature, that they're living their legacy now. It's not something that you think about later. It's something you live every day and give back every day. And so I want to peel back the layers of, many of your accomplishments and everything that you've done so far before we get into the nuts and bolts of it. Is let's go back to Chicago, because I know that's your hometown, South Side. What was it like growing up there for people listening around the world? I'm from London. I haven't been there. What's it like?
Yeah, man. So Chicago, I think every major city on the planet has a version of the South Side of Chicago. And the areas that I felt, close enough, or probably in your proximity, like Brixton, right? Like it's a very first generation, culturally driven, the smells, the sounds, the texture, the color, the vibrancy, the accent, the slang, the dress, everything is so centralized in that neighborhood that it's almost like, when you travel the world and you see people who dress and act and behave that way, you feel part of this tribe. So the South Side, what's beautiful about it is what people don't realize is that Chicago in and of itself was the only, if only, city in the United States major city that was founded by a Black man who was an immigrant from Haiti, Jean-Baptiste Toussaint. This man came from Haiti. And Haiti, if you know the history of Haiti, they won their independence first from France. They revolted. They were very powerful, very intellectual, very strong people. He came to the Americas. He did trade with the Native Americans in that region. And in process of doing trade, they gave him that land, Chicago, which is Chicago. And he turned that into a trading post, which eventually became an economic hub for the Midwest. Most people were traveling up north, going to Detroit, going to Canada. So that's the first piece. To grow up in a city that was founded by a Black entrepreneur is amazing, because you're reminded of that. You're reminded daily, like, wow, look at what this one man, his vision became. Second, there was a huge concentration of skilled labor and intellect that came from the South during the Great Migration. So the last time that there was a mass movement of people of African descent in the United States was when they came from the South to the North to find work. Beyond the escaping slavery and what we know about the Underground Railroad, the Great Migration was the big mass movement that drove a lot of economic growth and opportunities, in the North for people who were looking for a better life for their children. So having already been a displaced indigenous person, now generationally, you're a second generation of displaced people, your family coming from the South to the North, you have like this immigrant mentality. We don't have roots here. We don't have a network. We have to create the network. You mash that up with first generation Eastern Europeans, and then you have this beautiful tapestry of work ethic and culture. And it's all, kind of interwoven in this open air design museum. Because the third beautiful thing that happened in Chicago was when the Bauhaus shut down as a result of Nazi Germany. Most of the talent from the Bauhaus came to Chicago, right? And so you had IIT become what effectively is known as the second Bauhaus. So now you have the fathers of modernism. You have this industrial blue collar work ethic. You have people that are culturally very proud of where they come from. And you grow up in the middle of this as a child of a military man, a child of civil rights activists and pastors and mathematicians. And you can't help but just fall in love with the act of creation. There's no sense of inferiority. There's no sense of fear. And there's no sense of self-loathingness about, oh, woe is me, look at where I grew up. All you knew is that you had to hustle hard. You had to outwork your competition. You had to do something because of the sacrifices of your ancestors. So when people talk about this notion of a dystopian, kind of desolate, beat up South Side of Chicago, it's mythological. It's not real. There's so many things that have come from Chicago that affect culture at a high level. If you look at the people who are leading fashion, who are leading pop culture and critical thought, they're all from the South Side. And the reason being is because it's highly creative, it's curated, it's beautiful, it's intellectual, but at the core of it, man, it's an immigrant culture. That's it. We just work hard because we know what our parents sacrificed for us to have our opportunities.
I feel like you have a massive fascination with history. Like, did you know any of your ancestors, like the pastors and the activists and any of those guys? Because it seems like that's somehow rubbed off on you, if not through meeting them personally, then in your genes,
Yeah, in my family, there's a phrase, know yourself, know your worth. My family talks a lot about knowledge of self and history. Having family members that were civil rights activists, the one thing that they told us is that we were more than slaves. We come from kings. We are progeny of Ham. Ham was the first ruler of the world with a Hamocracy, which ruled Babylon. He's one of the three sons of Noah. You had Ham, Japheth, and Shem. And when you look at your bloodline and where we come from in North Africa with the Moors and the Nubians and the Cushites and the Egyptians and these people who literally to this day we can't figure out how they built the pyramids, and I know that that DNA is flowing in my blood, I don't have to walk around feeling inferior. I don't have to walk around feeling less than because I'm melanated. Melanin is a gift. It's a beautiful gift. And if we tap into the history of melanin and we see the interconnectedness between all people who are melanated, we can see this shared history. And so my family was very bullish on knowing our history, because that gives you a basis for your worth, right? Now, I didn't know until this year where I came from ancestrally in Africa. I'm Ghanaian. Ancestrally. I didn't know until I was able to do my DNA, like real deep DNA research, not just surface 23andMe, but like deep understanding and history. Now I'm anchored in a region of Africa. Now I'm anchored in a specific country. But until then, it was just knowing about people like Mansa Musa, knowing about people like Hannibal. Hannibal was my man. He took African war elephants through the Alps to go and fight Rome. Like, this brother went on elephants with a band of misfits to fight the Roman Empire. That's gangster. That's like, yo, that's not being whipped on some plantation. That's a man who's hell bent on conquering the world, and our DNA is tied to that person. So yeah, man, history. I don't care where you come from. If you don't know your roots, then you could be manipulated by what people tell you your worth is, versus knowing truly what your worth is ancestrally.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack there, man. Like, we could sit here and talk about that for hours, because that fascinates me. Because I was just thinking the other day and doing a bit of research exactly on that topic, and I thought, if we don't know where we come from ancestrally, then you don't know what your identity is truly. Like the way you've done your research, you don't actually know where you actually come from, because in history, so many people have migrated because of wars or because of famines or because of slavery. It's not just, black individuals, but Indians as well, which I realized later on, with coolies moved from Calcutta to what do you call it, Guyana and Colombia and Jamaica and all of these places. The British Empire took them, and I was like, hey, this is crazy. What if one of my ancestors came from there and then they grew up there? And that's why you see similar colored individuals in Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, but they sound different because they grew up there, but they were brought from that part of the world. So it's like, dive deep, man, because it takes you back, like, generation to see, where did I actually come from? And that research can never end. So it seems like, obviously, that keeps you grounded in everything that you do. And do you find it's a motivation as well? Like, I have to do something great because of where I've come from.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And it's not even I have to, it's I'm capable of doing something great, right? Because when we put the onus on ourselves and it's stress, we don't give ourselves room for failure. I think what we do as people of color is we feel this indebtedness and this burden. Like, success is a burden for us more than it is, a byproduct of our effort. It's like, man, I have to be successful. I have to. No, you're capable of it. So that frees you to have a growth mindset. Here's what I'm capable of. I choose if I want to step into that capability and amplify it through my abilities. Because there's a difference between capabilities and abilities. A lot of people are capable of a whole bunch of stuff, but how many people are able to actually take advantage of the capabilities, right? And I think that's what gives me the motivation and grounds me, is I know what I'm capable of. And if I do my part through, educating myself, staying fit, being a good person, understanding my history, then my abilities match and in some extent far exceed my capabilities. And so that's been my driving force, man, is knowing that at some point in time, there'll be stories told about this guy named Jason Mayden, who's your fourth, your great-great-grandfather, and here's what he did. I just want, people down the line in my family to be proud, to know our name stood for something, to know that there was a person in our family that decided to do something different, that caused a series of events that unlocked these opportunities that we never had before. And if that could be me for our generation, I'm thankful for that. So that's what drives me, man, is knowing that what I'm capable of, and then giving myself the abilities to maximize and optimize those capabilities.
I love that difference between capability and ability, because capability is like the hidden and latent potential we all have, and ability is those who go and you actually do something with it, like you have. So it's crazy. I'm glad you shared that. Let's talk a little bit about your relationship with rejection, because I know that started around age of 10, maybe earlier, but if I remember correctly, age of 10, you were writing letters. There was no email, no phone, no text, the way we have it now.
Yeah, man, my relationship with rejection, it actually started a little bit earlier. It started in about kindergarten because when I started at kindergarten, I didn't look like my peers. You know, I'm mixed ethnically. You know, my mother is half Jewish and black. My father is black and, you know, First Nation and a whole bunch of stuff. Like, we're ethnically so diverse. So my hair is completely straight and I'm this complexion. So when you're this complexion and you have straight hair, people are like, what the hell are you? Like, what are you? Like, I don't understand where you fit. And, you know, I was a little kid, I was sickly. And, you know, when I tried to reach out to people and talk with certain people, they didn't reach back. You know, I had a teacher, you know, in kindergarten, first, second grade, mentioned that I was broken to my parents. And I had what she called a learning disability, and I should be medicated and put in special education. She didn't realize that I actually was, you know, cognitively and intellectually testing at a collegiate level as a second grader. But in her mindset, something was wrong with me because I didn't do what other kids that age do. You know, I was weird. So, you know, being almost in a sense called a mutant, like an X-Men, I kind of just created my own world, you know, and I decided that if the world isn't going to accept me, then I'll create my own world. So I didn't care about fighting to be included. I spent my energy building my own world. So that's where the Nike letters came into play. I'm like, fine, if you don't think I'm cool, I can't wear product and people are making fun of me because of how I look, then I'll just go somewhere and build stuff that I love. I'll build my own inclusive game. I'll build my own world of acceptability. So when I started writing letters to Nike, the reason I was bold and fearless is because what's the worst thing they can tell me? No. A no is just a delayed yes. Like, I'm a chip away at you until I get that yes as a kid. Now, there are things that you should take a no, like a man should never not take no as a no from a woman. Right? Let's just say that on the record. I want to make sure anybody listening to me knows that no, you do not push yourself on a woman. That is disrespectful and it's egregious and it's the most barbaric, harmful thing a human can do. But when it comes to chasing your dreams and jobs and opportunities, no just means no right now, not no forever. So when I first heard no at the age of 10, I'm like, of course, I'm not even working age. I don't even have a worker's permit. But I figured my competition is not going to start applying for jobs until they're 16, 17. I'm at least 6 years ahead. So the no for me was more of a strategic bet for them to get to know who I am, get my name in the system, have a head start in communicating. Then over time, I didn't know what to ask for specifically, but I knew that they had given me a response. So that was permission to keep continuing, you know, that interaction. And then once I got more information, I heard about internships and jobs, and I was able to become more targeted, more specific. And eventually that led to people's names, and those names led to emails, and those emails led to interactions. So it really is about figuring out, you know, this is the whole thing about time. Kairos time is the definition is the opportune time to take action. It's quality of time. Chronos time is linear, it's measured, it's quantitative, it's a checklist. At that age of 10, I wasn't focused on Chronos. I didn't even know this. I was instinctually focused on Kairos. All right, this is a quality interaction, right? I'm taking action now at the age of 10 because most people won't turn down a kid. They'll just like, oh, this kid is cute. And I kind of knew that. I remember my mom, I think, told me like, oh, it's very hard for an adult to reject a child. So just, you know, send your thing and they might send you a letter back. Man, I took that phrase and I said, oh, adults can't say no to kids. That's all I heard. And I just kept, you know, kept sending them stuff. And it turned out, you know, in my favor. So I'm thankful for that level of exposure to rejection early because it helped to build up my risk profile and my tolerance.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. Like the fact that you instinctively knew that that was what you were doing. I mean, did someone push you to do that? Like, I mean, there's so many kids out there who have dreams and, you know, much older than you were at that age as well. But you somehow knew that, okay, if I keep going, I'm gonna get return on my investment in some shape or form, and I'm not gonna stop. But most kids wouldn't do. Like their focus is not on that type of chase and that hustle. Like they're focused on video games or phone. I know that wasn't around then, but you probably had the equivalent distraction for that time.
Yeah. You know, we had Nintendo and stuff, you know, late 80s, early 90s. But honestly, it was desperation. Like I needed to get out of my neighborhood. You know, like I knew it. I didn't want to I didn't want to live an uncommon life. I don't want to be common. I don't want to just be here and then not exist, just go away like a vapor. When you're faced with your own mortality at the age of 7, and you consciously are aware of the fact that you might not be alive tomorrow, it really does change you. It changes you in so many ways. It grows you up. It makes you appreciate things a little bit more, and it definitely takes away fear. That's the one thing I believe that happened with me is I had a near miss at an early enough age where I was stripped of any fear of trying, right? I was stripped of any caution or worry about being rejected because I had faced a moment where I might not even been alive. And so I think it wasn't like a very clear, coherent thought process around it, other than the fact like, man, I just beat death. And I really just want to try to see how far I can go with the time I have. So let me just start sending letters. Let me just reach out to people because I don't know what's going on. I don't know what could happen to me. So I just got to try this stuff. So I started writing letters. My first actual letter, first competition, I was 8 years old. I entered into Highlights magazine, which was a magazine in the U.S. for children's early childhood education. It was a drawing competition, and I won. And then I sent another letter. It was an infomercial that used to come on about going to this college where you would learn illustration and you would learn how to do cartoons. And so they gave you a visual test. I did the visual test, crushed it. I was like 8 or 9. They showed up to my house expecting to meet like a high school student. And I answered the door. My mom was like a 4th grader. And they were like, oh my God, like this kid, you're way too young to go to college. Like, why did you apply? I'm like, because it didn't have an age limit on the commercial. It just said apply. And so it was stuff like that I continuously was doing throughout my childhood. My parents would just shake their head like, our son is entering competitions, writing letters to colleges. What the heck is he doing? I just didn't think that it was, I didn't feel that I needed permission to advocate for myself. I just knew that this desperate feeling I had, that this pull to get outside of Chicago, it was an urgency there, because I felt like I didn't want to die in Chicago. I didn't want to be what I had heard about. I didn't want to be what I had saw. And that was really my driving factor, man, was just this survivalistic instinct to be more than a statistic.
How did that situation come about with your friend? Because I know that was like the emotional catalyst that allowed you to, propel you forward from that point.
Yeah, so that happened in my freshman year of high school. So everybody up to that point knew I was the Nike kid. They knew I had written letters. I had pretended to be older than I was to get a job at FootLocker. My brother had the job at FootLocker, and I finessed my way in and kind of like had a job without a paycheck. I was working there illegally. Shout out to FootLocker. Yeah, what happened is it was an argument in a class in zero period. We used to have 0 periods before school, as we called it, where athletes would go and work out, whether you go swimming or you hit the weight room. And, in this instance, one of my good friend who had gotten shot, he was an athlete. We were playing sports. And the cousin of my other friend who committed the heinous act, she was present. She heard him say a few things about him, and she was like, hey, I'm going to go and tell him, and you shouldn't be talking behind his back. And I was like, oh man, okay, this is going to turn out bad. So I thought they would have gotten into a fight. That's what everyone thought. Okay, they're going to fight after school. That's what we do. We'll just fight, and the next day everybody be fine. This time it wasn't the case. I felt something was going on. It was a different vibe. I get out of school early because, I was academically, thankfully, I was, in advanced classes, so I had more free time than my friends. I get out of school early. I go behind this company that was called Rent-A-Center, where you can rent TVs and refrigerators for your home. And it was this parking lot behind Rent-A-Center, and that's where all the fights happen. So people will tell you, meet me behind Rent-A-Center, and it's like, it's going down today, fam. It's like, it was like, that was where you went to go rumble. So I go there, I see my friend, and he was with some guys who were in their early 20s. So I knew, like, okay, first of all, we're freshmen. I know who these guys are. They're very villainous people in our neighborhood. And he was so calm. And I'm like, bro, what are you doing? He's like, I just want to talk to him. I'm like, but I don't feel like you do. I feel this is different, man. Like, please, bro, like, just walk away. It's not this serious. And before I can even have the opportunity to convince him to turn around and just walk it off and tell him, look, I was there. He didn't say everything that was said. My other friend walks up and they argue, and I'm standing in between the two. And before I could even put my hands up to separate them, he reaches around me and grabs my other friend by the arm and shoots him in the face. And this all is happening within like this distance of my head. Like I'm pushing my friends away. We're 14, we're kids. And I just remember the ringing in my ears. I remember the scream. First of all, I remember this vacuum of silence. It was like, pow, ringing. And then everything just went silent. And then you heard, ah, and people just dispersed in every angle and just started running. And I'm just standing there shocked. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. That moment, something in me, all I could think about was, this is not the end of my story. I will never be in this situation ever again. Keep moving your feet. I just kept telling myself, keep moving your feet, keep moving your feet, keep moving your feet. So I get up, I start to move, I start to, check my friend, and my other friend, he's leaving the scene. He's telling me, basically, he points the gun in the air and tells everyone, like, Jason wasn't here. No one saw Jason here. Jason wasn't here. Jason had nothing to do with this. And everybody is just running and panicking. And man, it was a surreal moment. And I literally had this it's like slowed down. I had this conscious dialogue in my mind. And I said, I will never be in this situation again. I will always stay in motion. I will never stand still for the rest of my life. And I always tell myself that. My wife, she hears me say it to myself, Jason, keep moving your feet. I've been saying that to myself since I was 14. Keep moving your feet, keep moving, stay in motion, stay in motion. Because I feel like if I stay in motion, then I can never be caught in that type of scenario. I don't know if that's true, but that's my comfort, is knowing that by being active, being in the world, staying in motion, I won't be frozen in that time, in that very, very, very delicate, fragile moment in my life where I saw something that I never want to see and have never seen again, thank God. But that was it. That was the moment I decided to, up until that point, I was writing letters and I was pushing. But after that, man, I graduated high school early. I went to college early. I mean, that between the age of 14, 5 years later, I was Nike's first African-American design intern. So you can see from 14 to 19, I just got busy. I'm like, I can't come back. And I haven't lived in Chicago since then. I go back often and I want to be mayor someday, but I know that 14-year-old Jason is still moving his feet, still growing, still learning. Because all the work I'm doing, honestly, V, I'm trying to help my two friends. That's what motivates me. If I can do work that can somehow retroactively help them when they were kids to grow up to not make that choice, that's what drives me. That's what drives me.
That's an emotional experience to go through. And as you said, you come back to it all the time, once in a while, just to keep yourself grounded and to remind yourself why you're doing this, basically. Do you think that's what propelled you through some of many of the rejections that you must have gotten between 14 to even now, like not even 19, like now? Like what's that been like? Did you consciously stop and think like, okay, this is not going as planned, but let me take it back. Why am I doing this? Who is it for? What's the point of this?
Yeah. I mean, I was recently rejected 2 days ago from an investor, and to the team, I said, no matter what happens, you're going to see me rejoice. You're going to see me have joy, because I'm not doing this for investors. I'm doing this for these two little boys that grew up to have a moment at the age of 14 that forever changed our lives. Like, that's all I'm doing, is remembering that, man, the work that I've undertaken and I'm undertaking with my life is bigger than me. It's bigger than shoes. It's bigger than clothes. This is giving a generation of children hope and the tools to make proper emotional decisions. And the people who don't see that vision, the people who don't believe in that vision, I don't need them. I don't want them around, because I do firmly believe, God is going to give me the things that are for me, and no man can stop that. I just fundamentally believe that what is for me and what the universe has for me is for me. It is up to me to forfeit it, but no man can stop it. So if someone tells me no, you just put me in a position to get closer to yes. Thank you for that. Thank you for putting me closer to yes. That's what a no means to me, because I don't care how many no's I hear, as long as I hear a no and I get to the yes quicker. That's it. The no's help you get to the yes quicker. And so obsessing over my why, obsessing over that 14-year-old moment, Yeah, it helps me. It grounds me. I talk about it all the time, because it's a form of psychological trauma that, if left unaddressed, could corrode my inner joy. And I'm a big fan of addressing, the things that are in your subconscious, because you cannot conquer what you don't confront. And as men, particularly men of color, we have this hyper masculine way of showing up in the world where we got to be tough, show no emotions, talk about how hard we are. It's like, nah, dude, I saw my friend get shot at 14 and I've cried every day since then. Like, literally, I cry about this at least once a day, because that trauma that I experienced is abnormal. It's not cool. It's not a rap song. It's nothing sexy about that. There's no bottles being popped and cars doing donuts. It's a very traumatic experience. And if I leave it inside of my own mind, then I don't heal. So I'm speaking about my pain as a way to find my purpose, but also to project to other people that it's okay to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is such a great strength. And as a Stoic philosophy fan, vulnerability is embedded in the principles of Stoicism. You have to be. There's no way you could be a Stoic and not be vulnerable. It's just the two concepts it's just you have to be. So I'm trying to show a new form of manhood. I'm trying to show a very tough guy that's very well intentioned, but also very well versed in how he feels and willing to express it in a non-physical way. Because it's real, it's tricky for us, man.
Just before I move on to some of the stuff that you did at Nike, I just want to say, I don't know what it is, and if anyone else has said this, but you have something about you where your energy is balanced. It's just male, female, high, low. That you somehow you figured out you've got this bounce, this rhythm to your energy. I don't know what it is, but I can just tell, and it's infectious to other people, because subconsciously I think, people think, I want to be like that. How is he doing that? How is he handling life so well, in the moment? And you're still present. Why are you talking about all this? You're not physically, upset and regretful or feeling any sort of hate or negativity. It's you're saying it, but with a level of presence that's allowing you to still feel joy, because you've put all the pieces of the puzzle together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I completely understand, and it's one, I'm a Libra, so we're naturally balanced. I don't really believe in zodiac signs, but I have done research about Libras. We do fall in line with this symmetry, and I'm a middle child, so I kind of have to be a little bit kind of egalitarian in how I manage my life and how I show up. But I think the most critical and important piece about it, V, is that I have a very deep personal relationship with the God that I pray to. And I know, regardless of what I do, that I'm finite. I'm limited in my potential. I'm limited in my capabilities and abilities, and in my life. There's only so much that I actually can control. And the only thing I can control is me, my thoughts. That's it. So once you let go of control and realize you don't have it at all, it's a false concept, and the only thing you can control is how you react to stuff, then you kind of have a sense of freedom. Because I can't control my breathing as much as I like to. If I hold my breath right now, my body will instinctually force me to take a breath, right? I can't control, how other people around me think of me. I just can't. It's none of my business what people think of me. But what I can do is I can control how I react or respond to every situation. And the response it's emotional. It's not calculated. It's somebody else controlling you, manipulating you to do something. A reaction is very intentional, purposeful, and thought through. So I try to, a response is calculated, a reaction is involuntary. So I try to respond in a very specific way to stimuli. I try to process, how did I contribute to a moment first before complaining about the moment? Because there's an action and reaction to everything, good or bad. And then I let go. I let go immediately. I get over stuff quickly. Man, you know what? It is what it is. Tomorrow's a new day. And that's taken a lot of practice. It's taken a lot of loss. But I'm truly free because I've given up what I believe I can honestly control. I have very little control. And it's, in the God that I pray to and what the Bible tells me, it's a childlike relationship that allows me to just simply, rely on his word, rely on his provision, and the trust that what he has for me is for me. So I'm just completely going through life, man, with the sense of lightness in my heart, because I know that I'm not responsible for everything. I'm not God. I'm not that powerful. And that's freed me. That it's taken years, but it's freed me from being, you know, chaotic in my emotions.
That's a deep level of faith, man. And I hope that people, you know, see that in the way that you're showing up in life, the fact that it's working for you. So, I mean, just changing gears a little bit. So at night, you're there at 19 now. I know at the start you were, you know, traveling the world. You're with some of the biggest stars like Jordan, Jeter, and those level of athletes. From your experience, one, what makes a good design? And two, what are some of the lessons that you remember taking away from Mr. Knight and Jordan?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say, to answer to what makes a good design, what I would say is there's no such thing as a bad design. It's just bad insight, right? Because your design is the end result of the insight, you know, and the insight comes from the observation. The observation is the first instinct to what you may believe is a problem. So if you don't identify the right problem to begin with, no matter what, the outcome is going to be trash. So it's like designers have to be observers of the world, and we have to extract insights from those observations and align those insights against the proper problem to solve, and then you get to a good design. That's a great design, something that solves a very specific problem for, you know, a very, either in some instances a specific audience or a mass audience, but it's the problem and the solution. That's when you see great design. Anything above that, we're talking about superfluous detailing. That's aesthetic. And unfortunately, the way design is being taught today, it's aesthetic driven because people want to put something out to elicit a reaction. A great design recedes to the background. It goes away. You don't even know it's there. It's frictionless, right? That's why when you see some of the world's best design objects, they may not be regarded as beautiful. A pair of scissors is a pair of scissors. It cuts things in half. That is a brilliant design. It is a problem, here's a solution. But no one would ever say, oh, it's a beautifully designed pair of scissors until someone layers aesthetic. But if you get to the essence of the intention of the object, then that's what makes it a good design. You know, intention placed in context is great design. Some of the things I've learned, you know, the second question from traveling and being around, you know, luminaries in their industry and legends, is that your greatest enemy is your inner me. You know, it's the dialogue you have in your mind. And also knowing that you don't have to be rich and famous to have power. Power is in your presence and how you show up. Titles do not give you power. You know, titles give you, I would say, a passive form of fear, because people are afraid to piss the person off with the title. That's not power. That's fear. It's fear. That's different. Fear leads people to do some crazy things. Power is born out of respect. If people respect you, I think that's the type of power that I would like to have. And I saw that with Jeter. I saw that with MJ. I saw that with Carmelo. I saw that with business leaders and, you know, musicians and athletes, entertainers, whatever, is the ones who were the most successful, you know, use their power to get respect. And they were always gracious with everyone. They remembered everyone's names. They treated the person at the counter serving them coffee like they were the CEO of the company. You know, and I saw that and I'm like, man, I want to do that. I want to make sure that no matter who's around me, they feel like they're the most valuable person in the world. I never want people to put me above them. I never want people to treat me like I'm special or any of that crap, because I think it's BS. And I think, you know, when we do that, we create this pecking order of importance. And I just believe that all people are valuable. All people may not be valuable to a certain industry, but all people are valuable. Life is valuable and precious. And I go out of my way to make sure that when I'm with people, I really do acknowledge their presence, and I'm thankful. You know, to watch Michael Jordan go around and tell, you know, someone who, you know, serves him iced tea at a restaurant, thank you, and look that person in the eye and say it sincerely, like, thank you. This is great iced tea, thank you. And mean it, and see that person's reaction like, holy crap, Michael Jordan said thank you to me. That's the most basic human thing you can do, is show gratitude. But the fact that they do that as a very specific choice, like, I want to be gracious, I want to show gratitude and humility because that's who I am, then I realized, like, all these people who walk around beating their chests and pounding on the table to get respect, man, that's because they're insecure. That's the insecurity breeds that type of behavior. Empathy is the strongest, most powerful thing you can display. Gratitude is timeless. And these gentlemen who are timeless, these women who are timeless, man, I want to be like that. I want to be elegant. I want to be regarded as respectful. I want people to be happy when I'm around. I want people to jump up because they're excited, not because they're afraid that I'm in the room, you know? And I wanted to mirror that, you know? And so I've been fortunate to learn from some people who've been very influential, not only in my life, but in like the history of the world.
That's true. Like after doing some reflection myself for the past year, one of the things that I'm trying to practice myself, and you know, that you brought up really well, was presence. It's free. Like you don't have to buy it. It's not something you have to gift to someone like through money. It's literally just paying attention, like fully
Yeah.
listening. That's the biggest form of gratitude you can give anyone, is listening. And you can tell from someone's body language how engaged they are. And when you do, they automatically feel happy, and you can see it in them because they're like, oh, they're actually paying attention to me. And in this busy
Yes.
world, that's you know, it's rare. It's really rare, especially in London. You've seen it. You've been here a few times. Like how busy people are. They don't even have time to stop and say thank you or hi or smile. Like it just doesn't happen, you know. So it's crazy. But what do you have any specific memorable conversations that come to mind when you think of your relationship with Michael Jordan?
Yeah, man, I do. The one that I could share, because I keep a lot of it to myself personally, just out of respect for his privacy. But the one that I could share, and I've shared publicly, was the first time I went to his home in Chicago, and how nervous I was, you know, because he's a legend. And mind you, like I grew up in the city. To go to Michael Jordan's house, to me, was a bigger deal than when I went to the White House. You know, that was like, that's the president of the United States. Okay, he's supposed to be important. This is Michael Jordan. This man defined my childhood. This man like made it possible for me to even believe that a black man can travel the world, right? So I go to his house, you know, we go in, and I'm exceptionally nervous. And, you know, there's this, at this moment, he had the center court from the old Bull Stadium as his part of his trophy room. And I'm looking at his slam dunk championships. I'm looking at his Wheaties boxes, his gold medals, his stuff from Space Jam, letters of acceptance into, you know, UNC. And I'm like, holy crap, like this is this man's life. This is like walking into, you know, looking at like if I went to Mount Olympus, right? Like that's the only equivalent I could think of. You went to Mount Olympus and you hung out with like the Olympians, right? Like with Zeus, like that would be crazy. So I get nervous and I ask him, I say, look, can I use your restroom before we go into talking about the product? And I go into his bathroom, and I wasn't using the bathroom at all. I think I started running the water in the sink, and I called my mom and dad, and I'm like, yo, this is crazy. I'm in his house. This man has like his logo on his towels and toilet paper. Like, this is insane. I didn't realize that I was in there for like 15, 20 minutes. So, you know, anybody would assume if you're in the bathroom for 15, 20 minutes, you're doing a lot. So he knocks on the door and he was like, yo, you know, make sure you wash your hands and tell your mother I said hello. So I'm like, oh. So, you know, I turn off the sink. You know, I pretend to flush the toilet. I didn't even use the restroom. And I come out, I'm so embarrassed. And he was like, look, man, I understand. I get it. I get it, man. I get where you came from. I get what you've been through. He's like, man, I think that's awesome that you would call your parents. I think that says a lot about who you are, that you want to share this moment with them. Like, man, I'm proud of you. You should be proud of yourself. You should be, you know, happy. You know what I'm saying, that you're in this moment. You earned it. You earned it, man. Be proud of yourself. And to hear that from him, it meant the world to me. Like, man, I could be proud of myself. Because up until that point, I had never really felt proud of myself. Even still, like, I didn't really feel proud of myself for any accomplishments until January of this year. And it was a dope moment that I was able to share with my parents. I wasn't made fun of. I was celebrated for wanting to have that be the thing I did. You know, because he heard me, he had great acoustics. So he heard me talking to my parents on the phone, tripping out. Somebody else, they would have been like, let me take a picture. Let me call this girl. Let me try to tell my friends. Like, no, I call my mom and dad. I'm in the bathroom crying like, I did it. I did it. I'm here. I really did it. Can you believe it? And he comes out. He's like, man, this is awesome. And, you know, he wrote me a letter when I graduated business school from Stanford. And what I can share from it was that one little phrase. And he was like, you should be proud of yourself because you did things the right way with hard work. You know, you did that. And yeah, man, I remember that moment so vividly because it was the first time I felt that, my dreams weren't crazy.
That's amazing, man. Like that emotionally, like that's going to stay with you forever now because of the fact that, you looked up to him. You grew up in the era that he was growing up, and to be in his house is just surreal. So that's amazing, man. I mean, after doing all the work and the accomplishments that you did at Nike for Jordan, you mentioned one of the proudest moments is, January just gone, and we we're talking off air about your relationship with FootLocker. I mean, if you could just give people a bit of a backstory about your relationship with FootLocker, and then, where Superheroic comes into your timeline, like how was it born?
Yeah. So my relationship with FootLocker, as I mentioned, man, it goes back to the age of 10. I used to go to FootLocker, and when I couldn't afford the shoes, the managers would let me sketch them. So I would hang out in FootLocker and draw the product to just learn about it. I used it as my research lab, and I had the good fortune of meeting sales reps, and the sales reps would tell me about designers. And so FootLocker has been part of it was my first touch point in the footwear industry, and the thing to kind of double click on that, a lot of people believe in order to get somewhere, they need to be in touch with the most famous person in that industry. No, you need to be in touch with the person that you get access to. I had access to FootLocker employees. I didn't have access to Tinker Hatfield. I didn't have access to Michael Jordan. I didn't have access to Phil Knight. I had access to the people who wore the zebra stripes, who were in the store, who were from my neighborhood, who were selling a product. So to me, those people were in the footwear industry. Those people were who I looked up to, and I wanted to learn from them. So I would go there, and it was a FootLocker in my neighborhood. I would hang out. It's the one that I posted in the article, that exact FootLocker. And I would spend hours upon hours just studying, researching, getting pamphlets, magazines, whatever it was for me to stay in the loop. So fast forward, all these years later, to be the first company, first startup, as a young man from the South Side of Chicago, to have FootLocker invest in my company and to be partners with me, not only in a monetary way, but in a brand way, a community way. It's meaningful, not only for myself, but for other kids who show up at shoe stores and stare at the shelf wondering, can they do that one day? Can they be part of the industry one day? And it gave me this sense of accomplishment, not because of the money or the, raising funds, because, the story of Superheroic is still being written. I don't know how it's going to turn out. I could want it to be successful, but, God may have different plans. But what I can say is I felt proud because it's a singular accomplishment that no one can take credit for. I didn't have an athlete next to me. I didn't have a celebrity. It was just me and my creative instincts and my desire to help kids that allowed that moment to happen. And that's why I said I felt proud. I've never in my life honestly, truly felt proud of myself, because I think pride is a drug. I think you become addicted to chasing that feeling of pride. And I never want to have that feeling so much where I just think that it's me, because I know there's a whole lot of luck and timing involved in who I am. But I felt proud because of what it represents for others. And Superheroic, that came into play. That has been in my mind since I was 7 years old, laying in a hospital with septicemia. My fleeting thoughts as the doctors and family members were discussing my mortality was like, man, I just want one more day to play with my friends. I just really want to play with my friends. It was around Easter when I was in the hospital, so I missed the whole Easter celebration in school. I didn't get to do Easter egg hunts. I didn't get candy. And they wrote me a bunch of letters like, get well soon. And I felt so bad. I'm like, well, what if I die? What if I don't get well soon? What if I can't come back to school? I'm going to let my friends down. I won't be able to play with them no more. So at 7, when you're not really having complex thoughts, it's like, nap time, snacks, hanging out. But the fact that I was so deeply focused on wanting to play, that stayed with me my entire life. So if you look at what I've done, Superheroic has been in motion since that age. And even at Nike, I did a shoebox. That was a lunchbox for kids. And we turned Michael into a cartoon, and we showed the Air Jordan 1s inside of a lunchbox. And my son was the model. And, I've always wanted to work in kids. I've always wanted to work in a capacity that inspired and encouraged them. So when I got out of grad school, my son had gotten sick. When I was at Nike, I'm in my dream job. And my wife and I prayed about it, and I decided, like, now's the time. I need to research how do I go and help kids, because my son is facing an invisible enemy. Thank God he's healthy today. And I'm using all my gifts and talents to fix broken adults instead of using my gifts and talents to build stronger children. And, spent a few years in different types of startups, moved back down to the Silicon Valley, went back into Stanford as a researcher and figured out that I needed to focus on something that was both targeting not only social, emotional, and physiological well-being in children, but how they show up and see themselves as being people that can actually solve some of the world's stickiest problems. So playing with different archetypes, different business models, I just went back to what I know. I know footwear, I know apparel, I know how to get people to play, I know how to tell stories, I love comic books. These are things that could be very great catalysts for physical movement and imagination for children. So we put it all into a plan in 2016. I was fortunate enough to have some of my first investors be people like Magic Johnson and the founder of eBay, Pierre Midyar. And I met these people not because I was pitching them my business. I met them when they saw me in the community working with kids. That's the crazy part. This wasn't me going to pitch them. They saw me, like Magic saw me, or Irvin saw me receive an award in Chicago for my dedication to the community and how I was helping children in education. Pierre Midyar saw me at Stanford, as I was building a nonprofit called The Tribe, which was teaching young men of color survival skills based on the Boy Scouts model in the US. So they saw me in context, in my passion for this space when no one was looking. And they decided to, that if I ever did do a business, that they wanted to be involved. And so we've been around now for 2 years and 8 months exactly. It's about roughly 10 of us. And, we're at the beginning of creating what we call, we want to own unusual play. It's a movement. It's a company focused on social good and, of course, building a business because you need money to help people. And I'm excited at what's to come, the challenges, the losses, just as much as I'm excited, for the victories and the success. So, it's a work in progress.
Congrats on all your success, man. You've come from everything we've spoken about from that day of being 7, 14, and then 19. It's like it's all stacked on top of each other to bring you where you are today. And now, because you were a kid one day yourself with those big dreams, with that curiosity, with that relentless nature, you can then go and help, those guys who are coming up in the new generation to do the same, but for their era. So no, congrats on that, man. Like, it must have been an amazing feeling to be able to announce that last month with FootLocker. So just to get into the final few questions then, before we wrap this up, if you had a microphone and every person in the world could hear you, what would you say to them?
You're enough. That's it. You're enough. That's it. I mean, I wouldn't say anything other than that. I think the thing people struggle with the most is we feel we're not enough. We feel we need the cars, the clothes, the degrees, the inclusion, the high profile friendships, the social following. That don't matter. You're enough. You're enough to be loved. You're enough to be respected. You're enough to be successful. Now that you're enough, what do you want to add to it to kind of amplify the possibility of those things coming true? But none of us are, we don't have a negative balance. If there's a balance sheet, we're not in a negative balance in terms of our worth. We're all enough. And everybody needs to feel that they're enough instead of feeling like they're not because of other people's success. That's that person's journey. It has nothing to do with yours. Somebody's gain doesn't take away from you, So that's what I would want to tell people. You're enough, because in this age, it's all about clout, and that clout leads to self-esteem issues. The people who are well-known are often the most insecure and have really nothing to offer other than their bodies. That's why you see so many people becoming famous who get naked on social media. It's like, well, what are you contributing to the conversation? Because every single day there's going to be another person that's in shape. There's going to be another person that will take off more clothes. Like, that's not, what are you really contributing? It doesn't really move the needle. But that's because in society, we haven't valued the right things about each other. We haven't valued someone's intellect. In one generation, we went away from celebrating Nobel laureates and scientists as our greatest champions to now celebrating people who do stupid tricks on Instagram. In one generation. Like, I grew up and people constantly talked about scientists and mathematicians, and it was like, wow, man, I want to be an astronaut. Now you ask kids what they want to be, they say they want to be a YouTuber, right? So it's like in one generation. Now, there's nothing wrong with social media. It's just we got to, once again, push to diversify what success looks like, because this generation really believes that it's only social media that makes you successful, but it's so many other factors to that. So that's what I would mean, man, is you're enough. No matter whether you become a scientist or you become a YouTuber, do it because you feel it's who you are, not because you're trying to be accepted by other people. That's what I would want to share with folks.
I love that, man. And there's so much to unpack there if we were to stay with that particular topic, because with social media, it amplifies that problem 10 times as much, because then you get to see this facade that other people are living. But yeah, I'm glad you shared that message, because it's one that most people do end up sharing, because you felt that feeling of not being enough at some point in your life. And then you come to realize that, and you want to share it with others so that they can live it sooner. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the second question is, what's the biggest lie we've been told today?
What's the biggest lie we're being told today? Man, that we're not in control of our, I would say, our local outcomes. I think, and this may get a little bit political. I think we've been told to put too much trust in our politicians. They work for us. We don't work for them. The power dynamics are off. These people in office, they're there because we allow them to be there, right? Even if they stole the election or whatever, what have you, whatever system you're in, whether it's the monarchical system or the parliamentary or whatever, those people are there to work for us. But for some reason, we forfeited all of our demands and we just let them tell us what's right for us. People who never use the same healthcare, never send their kids to the same schools, never even live in the same neighborhoods, but somehow they know what's better for us. That's the biggest lie that's being told. I think the people who work in these positions need to be servants of humanity, not observers, not critiquers, but servants, true people who are for the people, by the people, right? Because at the end of the day, these roles are not as important as we make them out to be, because it's the local politics, it's the local contributions, it's the local day-to-day activity that we all are impacted by. What's happening around me in my neighborhood is more important to me than what's happening nationally, because I'm living in this neighborhood. So I think that's the biggest lie we're being told, man, is that these people in office, somehow they don't work for us. They work for us. These are our employees. We pay their salary, right? But we're arguing over the wrong nonsense, because I don't think people have the ability to understand governance and accountability and respectability the way we used to, because we're not taught that in school anymore. Our education system is so broken that the art of critical discourse, the understanding of rhetoric, the understanding and examination of the law, the understanding and examination of civics and humanity, none of that stuff is truly articulated unless you can go to some very overinflated private school, which is ridiculous. And so I think, for me, the greatest lie being told is that by having more money and more education, you're better. And if you don't, if you're come from a neighborhood where you don't have the resources, just trust your politicians and they'll do everything for you, because you don't know how to handle it yourself. That's a complete lie, man. It's BS. And I think once we realize that we are in control as a people, collectively, numerically, mentally, then we can start to get some of the things that we care about. And people can really see some change at the local level, which is where it's really needed.
There's again, there's so much to unpack there. And I know you said from the beginning you don't want to get too political, so we won't get into that too much, but I'm glad you shed a little bit of light on that, because it gives people something to think about. And it's true, all along, you come to realize at the end that you always had the power. The key was always in your hand anyway. There's always something you can do every day. And I think it's an excuse just to put the power in someone else's hands, because you can't be bothered, or not even you can't be bothered, but it's just you want to escape from your current circumstance and put it in someone else's hands and have that feeling of, okay, maybe where I am is okay because I couldn't do anything about it anyway, which is not true. So yeah, man. And just to get into the final question then, with everything you've accomplished so far and everything you're going to accomplish on the path that you're currently on, what's the legacy you want to leave behind?
The legacy I want to leave behind. It's a great question. I think for me, it definitely isn't monetary. It definitely isn't business. I want people, I want to be this generation's champion for children. When people talk about generations, you go back in time, you hear about Walt Disney, you hear about Mr. Rogers, you hear about Jim Henson, you hear about these men and women, I should say as well, who've dedicated their lives to the well-being of the youth, and they use their creative expression to do that. I believe that I was born to be that person for this generation, to be the person that preserves and fights and advocates for childhood in an important way, not in just a, you know, a grimy, slimy, let me sell a bunch of product, but no, like I want to make sure I remind people that that these children are watching us and they're learning from us, and their behaviors will reflect what we teach them. So we need to teach them how to love each other, teach them how, you know, if you can play together, you can live together, teach them about caring for people who aren't like you, for understanding that this world is beautiful and diverse. And the reason why diversity matters is because you can't see the fullness of what this planet has to offer unless you interact with people different than you. Now, I just feel like we're getting so caught up with our greatest thought leaders, you know, being placed in industries that are simply trying to hack the system, or simply trying to quickly growth, blitz growth, or whatever they call it, build up this startup or build up this app and exit. And I'm like, all right, well, who's focused on the kids, man? Who's like truly focused on the well-being of our babies? That's the legacy I want. I want people to talk about me in the same breath as when they talk about, you know, Walt Disney, Jim Henson, and Mr. Rogers, in the North America and maybe even global, because I don't believe that there's very people, especially, you know, I hate to say it, but the stereotype about men of color is that we're absent fathers. And statistically, we're not. We're more present and more engaged. So kind of that, I just want to represent a new face of parenting, a new face of fatherhood. And I want my legacy to be about, you know, using my gifts and talents to fight for the most precious group of people that I believe we have, which is our children.
And you're doing that, man, with everything that you've done so far. Like you embody humility, courage, empathy, you know, caring, being kind, like all of those things. They just, people, you can just pick it up from your energy and the work that you're doing. Obviously you're involved in work that's directly linked to serving humanity and improving and getting a return on the investment of the next generation, which are going to be the people that, you know, as you've once said, solve the problems that we leave behind, which I love. So thank you so much for doing the work that you do, man. And, I'm honored that you took the time to share with everyone. I'm sure people are going to enjoy this. If people want to follow your journey, what you're doing, everything that you're about, where can they do that?
You can follow me at Jason Mayden, JASON across all social platforms. And you can follow us at Superheroic across all social platforms. What I ask is that when you follow, tag a friend, tell them about our message, because we can't do this without you. We're doing this with you and for you. So this isn't a company that's just trying to sell you things. This is a company that's trying to empower you to go out to your community and help yourself. Because I'd rather teach a person how to fish than give them a fish. That's more important to me. So we're trying to build leaders, you know, and that's our goal.
Most definitely, man. No, thank you so much again. And I look forward to catching up again and doing episode number 2, man, to see how much further you've gone.
Definitely, bro. Thank you.